Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to talk to you about effective communication and strategies that we can use to communicate more effectively with the people around us. Before we begin, let's go again into the definition of the word first. What does it mean when we talk about communication? So, communication itself consists of a dialogue. And either we're using our voice or we're using some other means, for example, our expressions or something else, as a means or a medium to express a message that exists in the mind and for the other party to receive that message as we are trying to express it. So communication is basically a dialogue which occurs by sending out a message and then you're receiving the message on the other end, and then that person might be sending out a message that you are receiving on this end. That's basically what we talk about when we are discussing communication, and it does not always have to be through words. So how does the human body actually take in messages, or how do we interact with the environment around us? We do it through the five senses, correct? We do it through the sense of sight, through visuals. So we can communicate to other people through these five senses. We can create visuals. We can, use words, spoken words, which is the tongue. We can give them sounds to hear. We can, use the sense of touch. We can, all kinds of things. So, using those five senses, we are able to send messages and we are able to especially receive the messages, right? Now, interestingly enough, they say that 70% of all conflicts happen as a means of miscommunication. And what does that mean? Well, that means that um, if I'm speaking to somebody else and I have a conflict with them, usually it's not the case that they're disagreeing with me, it's the case that they haven't understood what I'm saying in the first place. So it often helps, especially in relationships or in terms of when we have to communicate with other people, that when we are saying something, see if the other person actually understood what we are trying to say. If I gave, for example, if I gave my child some instructions that she has to go and grab me a cup of water, maybe the reason she didn't bring the cup of water to me is because she must have misunderstood the message that I was giving. And why is it that people misunderstand? That's the other thing, that do we often find that we're being misunderstood by the people around us? If this is happening on an ongoing basis, and if this is happening too often, that we feel the other party is not understanding us, nobody understands me, why don't you understand me? Why don't you ever listen to what I have to say? If this is something that's happening on an ongoing basis, definitely this is something we need to work on. In the same way, if you're the person that often hears this, that why don't you understand me? Why can't you just understand what I'm trying to say? Again, being on the listening end, there could be a lot of things that need to be resolved as well. So let's take some time to look into what might be creating some barriers to our communication. So, when we're trying to communicate a message with somebody else, the first thing we have to do is communicate that message to our own self and see if we understand that message. Before I tell somebody else, a lot of what we've learned is act or believe in what you want to say to the other person first. So, when we want to say something, is it possible that first, before anybody else says anything, do we have limiting beliefs, or do we believe in the opposite of what we are saying? If I want to say that, for example, I'm going to do this seminar and I'm going to nail it, I'm just going to do so amazing in the seminar, and if I don't believe in myself, I can't expect another person to believe in me, right? Same way, Um, if we want somebody to appreciate us, if we want somebody to understand us, we have to be able to resolve a lot of the inner conflicts that we have within ourselves. Once we do that, we've cleared one of the barriers of the communication, right? When we are communicating, we want to set an intention that of the message that we want to communicate, and we want to set the intention for the other party to receive that message in a positive way. The same thing goes, for example, when we're doing prayer. So we're sitting on the prayer mat, and we raise our hands and, oh God, please help me with this issue. A lot of the time, even in that situation, we're not communicating effectively. Why? Because I can be sitting there and saying, oh God, please help me and, give me some resources to be able to accomplish this task. And in my mind, on the back of my mind, I'm thinking, hey, that's never going to happen. Or, oh, I feel so hopeless. Uh, you know? So before we communicate any message, we want to have the same intention as what we are saying with our words, right? So that's the second barrier to communication. Um, the third barrier to communication happens not just with the intention, but our gestures and our expressions. So, for example, if I close my arms and I'm sitting like this, right? And I want the other person, like especially when we're talking about relationships, if I want my partner to come and talk to me openly and, to have good, excellent discussions with me, that's not going to happen because I might be saying, hey, why aren't you coming here? But or I'm sitting like this. I'm very, very, very closed right now, right? I'm giving the expression that no, I don't want somebody to even come near me or to talk to me, just go away. My gestures are not supporting the message that I'm giving out through the words, right? Um, it could be somebody's like really angry state, ready to fight, right? And I'm saying, oh yeah, but I really care about you. We do that a lot. We just don't realize that we are doing that. And when we feel that the people around us are not understanding us, these are some of those things that we need to pay attention to. I just exaggerated a lot of it, but we are doing that a lot. Like, for example, we can come home having a bad day, and the expressions on our face are showing anger, but we want our partner to respond to us in a really nice way. When we come home, you should have the food ready and everything. So, not going to happen. You have to be able to communicate to them to be able to receive, be on the positive receiving end as well. So, our gestures and expressions, it's so interestingly, you can actually read individuals, right, through the expressions they have on their face. So, for example, you're trying to talk to somebody and their eye movements are not staring back at, like, you're not making eye contact, they keep rolling their eyes like in all kinds of directions. That shows an expression of avoidance, right? So they want to avoid this situation, or they're fidgeting a lot. That shows that they're not really they don't want to listen right now, or something is happening, something is causing them anxiety from this discussion. So we want to clarify those barriers first and then be able to communicate in a healthy, you know focused uh, discussion. Right. Once we clear that as a barrier to communication, there's still some barriers remaining. So one of those barriers could be language and the meaning that's derived out of it. Now, there's two ways that language could become a barrier. One could be that I am speaking a different language than the person in front of me. So I could be speaking English, they could be speaking, another language. Now it becomes a barrier. I can't communicate. Beyond this, language comes with its cultural uh, definitions as well. So you know how back home in the in the eastern side, we don't want to uh, talk to somebody by just saying their name directly. It's a sign of disrespect. Whereas in the Western culture, you know, talking to someone by saying their name is more of a sign of, you know, that you're a good friends with them, or you know, it's kind of normal to do that. Even you can talk to your parents by just saying their name. So again, that creates a barrier when you're doing one thing in one way and the other party is not understanding it in the same way because of the cultural differences. Now, let me share an experience with you. I actually, in my childhood, I had a friend who was Chinese, and I was raised up in a more traditional kind of Pakistani Indian kind of culture, right? So here's the differences, the cultural differences. In our culture, when we have guests, we expect the guests to finish the food that's on their plate. That's a sign of, like, okay, I love the food. Um, you know, I'm fulfilled. This is it. In our culture, it's often that if you leave the food, it's kind of disrespectful and it's a sign of ingratitude, because in the end we're wasting the food, we're wasting the resources, it's bad for the environment. So all of us, at some point in our lives, are raised to believe that if we have a plate of food, we have to clean that plate, right? Now in that culture, if you have a guest that's coming and eating the food, if by chance their plate gets clean and they finish the food, what that means in this culture would be that it's um, you have not been a good host to them because they finished it. If you actually gave them the amount of food that would fill them up, they would not be able to finish it. So here's me in my friend's house. They're putting the food in my plate, and I'm trying to finish it. Then when I finish it, they are putting more food in my plate. And then I'm like, oh my God, this is more food. But I'm still trying to finish it. To the point I just couldn't do it anymore. And they were very concerned that how do you guys actually keep finishing it? So at one point, I'm about to finish it, and my friend is saying, okay, don't worry. I'm just gonna go over there and grab some more food. And I'm like, why? Why are you going to grab some more food? This is too much for me already. And that's when we understood that there has been a difference in terms of, you know, the culture. That what they're saying on one hand is different than what we are born and raised to believe. So sometimes that becomes a barrier to communication. But beyond that, specific words we use have specific meanings for everyone else. When I say that the sky is blue for me, it's not always the case that the sky is going to be that the other person sees blue in the same way as me. The only way I know that this is blue is because from the day I was born till now, when I look at that color, I am told to believe that that's blue. Similarly, especially in the early childhood years, we form the meaning of different words. And for different people, there's different experiences attached to words. Remember that nobody is born speaking a language. Language is something entirely learned. And when we learn something, that has to be based on that does come with an experience, right? So language is basically a collection of learned experiences. So then we can understand that the words that we are saying might not always be understood in the same way by the other person. That's why some people, they can be using a lot of swear words in their language and it doesn't affect them. It doesn't mean anything to them. Whereas some people, you say one word and it puts them in a state of anxiety that why did you even use this word in front of me, right? They have a really negative experience attached to that word. And that the whole thing is that when we're communicating with each other, we cannot always know what's the other party receiving on their end, right? So, with that, again, the best thing to do right in that kind of situation, if you feel like you're not being understood, see if the other party has understood your message as you're saying it. Repeat it to them. Hey, did you understand what I was saying to be like this? They could say yes. I understood what you were saying, or they could say no. I thought you meant this. And nowadays, what happens is with technology, we're not using all of the same means to communicate. We're using newer methods, and those methods can become even more barriers because sometimes you can be using words in a chat and you don't have any expressions behind them, right? You can be using emojis, but you don't know if that the person's intention and actual expression matches that emoji, right? Um, Beyond that, other barriers to communication, expectations, limited beliefs. Um, I could be listening to somebody and having so many expectations from them that I don't hear a word of what they're saying. So a person makes a mistake, right? For example, a child comes and they just took a cup and it fell, it broke. My expectation was that this was not going to break. I needed it, and now it's broken, right? So my expectations, the child could be apologizing, the child could be saying a number of things, but in my mind, something else is going on, right? Same way we might expect something from another person, like a partner. We want them to say a specific thing to us, but because we're expecting them to say it, they're just not saying that specific thing, and our mind is just not focused on what they're saying. And they could be saying a number of good things to us, but because they didn't say those specific words, I'm expecting too much from them. I'm not going to understand it. So, expectations, yes, they do become barriers to communication. And this is where the generation gap sometimes comes in as well, because both of those generations, the elder generation and the younger generation, are having expectations of each other that they're not able to fulfill, and then those expectations become those limited beliefs that do not allow them to be able to openly communicate. And beyond that, the most common ones are not actively listening to the other person. When they're saying something, you have a lot of other background noise going on, or you're focused on something else. That can become a barrier to communication. You've just not understood what the other person says. So, how do we resolve this? Well, as I said, one of the first things we did when we talked about uh, having good communication patterns is set the intention first of the message that you want to convey. So, whatever you want to say, first set the intention that this is the message I want that person to on the receiving end to get. Because a lot of the time, what happens is we're not just communicating through words or through gestures we're also communicating our energy. Have you ever noticed, for example, when you're in a stress state, especially the children, the younger ones are very sensitive to our energies. You're in a bad mood, you could be saying 1,000 good things, but your child just seems cranky, um, and just not listening to anything. They're just not in a good mood. You're like, why is this even happening? I'm having a bad day already. Now they're doing their stuff. It's happening because they feel your energy. So one of the ways to effectively communicate is you want to set good energy within yourself, and you want to set the intention for that person to receive it. Then you want to send the good energy to the other person. First, send them a mental message that this is what I want you to understand, and then take the time to communicate with them in a very positive, relaxed state. And believe me that a lot of those issues that you're encountering right now, when you say they just don't understand me, are going to be resolved.